Mom, don't ever go back to Grandma's house.
Noah, what happened there?
I heard Dad talking about you, so I recorded it.
Recorded what?
Just press play, Mom. You need to hear this.
Promise me you'll never go back to Grandma's house. Those were the first real words my 9-year-old son said after spending 12 days with my husband and his mother. Before I could ask why, he locked the front door, pulled an iPad from his backpack, and whispered. I recorded them because I thought nobody would believe me. Then he pressed play. And in less than 1 minute, I learned that my marriage, my home, and even my relationship with my own child had been part of a plan I was never supposed to discover. Hello, my name is Emily Carter. I'm 38 years old, and until last summer, I thought I had a normal life in Franklin, Tennessee. Not a perfect life, just a normal one. I had a husband named Daniel, a 9-year-old son named Noah, a small marketing business I ran from home, and a brick house with blue shutters that I had bought before Daniel and I got married. But that last detail would matter later. A lot. Daniel and I had been married for 11 years. He worked as a regional sales director for a medical supply company, which meant he traveled constantly. Atlanta, Charlotte, Birmingham, Louisville. Sometimes he was gone 3 nights a week, sometimes 5. At first, I admired how hard he worked. Later, I realized his travel schedule gave him something more valuable than airline points. It gave him a second life I could not see. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The summer everything changed started with a simple suggestion. Daniel's mother, Margaret, lived outside Chattanooga in a large white house at the end of a private road. She had been widowed for years and liked reminding everyone that she was perfectly capable of taking care of herself. Margaret was 65, elegant, controlled, and polite in a way that never felt warm. She never shouted at me. She didn't need to. She had a gift for saying cruel things in a voice soft enough to make you wonder whether you had imagined them. If I cooked dinner, she would smile and say, "It's wonderful that Emily tries so hard." If Noah hugged me in front of her, she would say, "He really is attached to you, isn't he?" If Daniel disagreed with me, Margaret would tilt her head and say, "Some women need to feel in control. It gives them security." Then if I got upset, Daniel would tell me I was reading too much into it. That was his favorite sentence. "You're reading too much into it." For years, I heard it so often that I stopped trusting my own reactions. So when Daniel suggested that Noah spend nearly 2 weeks at Margaret's house during summer break, I hesitated. Daniel noticed. "What?" he asked. "Nothing. You made that face?" "What face?" "That worried face you make when there's nothing to worry about." I should have paid attention to how quickly he dismissed me. Instead, I laughed. He told me the trip would be good for Noah. Margaret had a big backyard, a creek behind the property, and a neighbor with horses. Daniel said he would stay there for the first few days, then leave for a work trip while Noah remained with his grandmother. I asked Noah how he felt. He shrugged and said, "Can I bring my iPad?" That was enough for Daniel. See, he's excited. Noah wasn't excited. He just wanted his iPad. Still, I agreed. The morning they left, I packed Noah's clothes, sunscreen, allergy medicine, books, headphones, and a charger long enough to reach the bed at Margaret's house. I also made him promise to call me every night. "Mom," he said, rolling his eyes, "I'm 9, not 90. You're still calling." "I know. And if anything feels strange, call you. If you're uncomfortable, call you. If Grandma makes you eat lima beans, call the police." I laughed. He laughed. That laugh stayed in my head for the next 12 days. The first 3 nights were fine. Noah called around 8. He told me about feeding Margaret's dog, walking by the creek, and helping Daniel clean out an old storage shed. On the 4th night, Daniel left for what he said was a sales meeting in Knoxville. Noah's calls changed after that. They became shorter, quieter. He stopped telling stories. On the 6th night, I asked him what he had done that day. "Nothing." "You were at Grandma's all day and did nothing?" "We watched TV." "What did you watch?" I don't remember. Noah remembered everything he watched. If a cartoon character sneezed in episode 3 of a show he liked, Noah could explain the sneeze 6 months later. Something was wrong. "Is Grandma in the room?" I asked. There was a pause, then Noah said, "Yeah." My hand tightened around the phone. "Okay, well, I love you. Love you too." Before the call ended, I heard Margaret's voice in the background. "Tell your mother she worries too much." The line went dead. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. Then I texted Daniel, "Is Noah okay?" 3 minutes later, he replied, "Of course, stop stressing." Mom says he's having fun. I stared at the message. Mom says, not Noah says. Mom says, the next morning I called Noah while I knew Margaret would be at church. At least, that was her usual Sunday routine. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, Mom." His voice was low. "Are you alone?" Another pause. "Yeah." My heart started pounding. "Noah, listen to me. You don't have to protect anybody's feelings. If something is making you uncomfortable, you can tell me." "I know." "Has Grandma hurt you?" "No." "Has Dad?" "No." I let out the breath I was holding. "Has anyone scared you?" Silence. "No." "Oh, I don't know." That answer frightened me more than yes would have. What do you mean? I heard stuff. What stuff? The sound of a door closing came through the phone. Then Noah's voice changed. Grandma's back. I gotta go. The call ended. I called Daniel immediately. He didn't answer. I called again. Nothing an hour later. He texted. In a meeting. What's up? I typed I want Noah home. I deleted it. I typed it again. Deleted it again. Then I called Margaret. She answered with that same calm, polished voice. Emily? Is everything all right? I spoke to Noah. Yes. He said you called during church. He sounds uncomfortable. A small laugh. He misses you. That's normal? I'm thinking about coming to get him. There was a pause so short most people would have missed it. I didn't. Then Margaret said, that seems unnecessary. I didn't ask if it was necessary. Another pause. This one longer. Then her voice became sweeter. Of course. You're his mother. Something about the way she said it sent a cold feeling through me. You're his mother. Like it was temporary. Like she was reminding herself of a fact she expected to change. I stood up from the table. I'll call you back. I hung up. 10 minutes later, Daniel called. What are you doing? No hello. No how are you? Just, what are you doing? I'm thinking about picking Noah up. Why? Because something feels wrong. There it was. The sigh, the same sigh I had heard for years. Emily, this is exactly what my mother was talking about. I went still. What was your mother talking about? How you don't let him separate from you. My voice dropped. What? You hover. You worry. You make him anxious because you're always acting like something bad is about to happen. I could feel the old reflex waking up inside me. The urge to explain myself. To prove I wasn't unreasonable. To calm him down. To keep the peace. But this time something stronger pushed through it. My son told me he heard something that scared him. He's a kid. Yes. My kid. Daniel was quiet. Then he said, don't drive out there. I'll bring him home Friday like we planned. Duh. Daniel? Emily? Enough? He hung up on me? That night I did something I had never done before. I sent Noah a message instead of calling. If you ever hear something that makes you scared or confused, you can write it down or record it on your iPad. You don't have to confront anyone. You don't have to be brave for anybody. Just keep yourself safe and bring it home to me. He didn't answer. But the message showed as read. 6 days later, Daniel pulled into our driveway. I was outside before the car stopped moving. Noah stepped out carrying his backpack. He did not run to me. He did not smile. He looked at Daniel first. Then he looked at the house. Then at me. And in that moment, I knew something had happened. I hugged him. His whole body felt stiff. Hey, sweetheart. Hi. Want some lemonade? He shook his head. Daniel came around the car with Noah's suitcase. He's exhausted, he said. I looked at him. Daniel looked completely normal. Tan, relaxed, almost cheerful. How was your trip? Fine. Where were you? His eyes narrowed slightly. Knoxville. I told you. I smiled. Right. He carried the suitcase upstairs. The second he disappeared, Noah grabbed my wrist. Hard. Mom. I looked down at him. His face had gone pale. What? Don't ever go back to Grandma's house. My stomach dropped. Why? He glanced toward the stairs. Then he locked the front door. That scared me more than anything. Noah reached into his backpack and pulled out his iPad. I did what you said. He opened the video folder. There were 3 recordings. Not 1. 3. The first was 47 seconds long. Noah had hidden the iPad behind a row of decorative books in Margaret's den. The camera faced the room through a narrow gap. Margaret sat on the sofa. Daniel stood by the fireplace. My husband, the man who had told me he was in Knoxville. He had never left Margaret's house. I pressed play. Margaret spoke first. She'll fight you on Noah? Daniel answered, not if we do this right. My hand went numb. Margaret leaned forward. You need to stop hesitating. You already moved the money. You already talked to the attorney. Daniel looked toward the hallway. Then he said, I need a few more weeks. For what? To make the situation look consistent. Margaret lowered her voice. Then keep documenting her behavior. I couldn't breathe. Daniel replied, I have been. Every time she calls repeatedly, every time she questions where I am, every time she gets emotional, I save it. Margaret smiled. And once you file, Daniel's answer was so calm that it frightened me more than shouting ever could. I ask for primary custody. I say she's unstable, controlling, and financially irresponsible. Then the house becomes leverage. The video ended. I stared at the black screen. Noah whispered, there's more. The second video was longer. In it, Margaret opened a small desk drawer and removed a folder. Daniel was sitting nearby. Margaret said, the credit line is still in her name. Daniel nodded, mostly. The paperwork is complicated, but by the time she notices, A will already be in court. My mouth went dry. I owned our house before marriage. My father had helped me buy it when I was 28. Daniel's name had later been added to some household documents, but the original purchase and most of the equity were mine. I had always believed the house was the one part of my life nobody could quietly take from me. Apparently Daniel had been trying. Then came the third recording. This one was only 22 seconds. But it was the one that changed me, Margaret said. And the boy? Daniel rubbed his face. Hella just. He's too attached to her. I know. You need him to start seeing her differently. Daniel looked toward the hallway again. Then he said, "That's why he's here?" I stopped the video. My son was watching me. His eyes were wet, but he was trying not to cry. What did they say to you? I asked. Noah looked down. Grandma kept asking questions. What kind of questions? Like if you get mad a lot? I swallowed. What did you say? I said everybody gets mad sometimes. A tear slipped down his cheek. Pie. She said I should think harder. I pulled him close. He kept talking into my shoulder. She asked if you ever stop me from seeing Dad. I said no. Then she asked if you make me scared when Dad travels. I said no. Then she said maybe I don't notice because I'm used to it. I closed my eyes. And they weren't just planning a divorce. They were rehearsing my child. Did Dad ask questions too? Noah nodded. He said if someone asked me who I felt safer with, I should remember that you worry a lot. For 1 second, I wanted to storm upstairs. I wanted to throw the iPad at Daniel. I wanted to scream so loudly the neighbors heard every word. Instead, I looked at my 9-year-old son and made the most important decision of my life. I did nothing. At least nothing Daniel could see. I wiped Noah's face. You did exactly the right thing. Are you mad at me? No. Are you mad at Dad? I looked toward the staircase. Yes. Noah's eyes widened. I added, but you don't have to carry that. That's grown-up business now. That night, I acted normal. I made chicken tacos. Daniel complained there was too much cilantro. I apologized. I actually apologized. Then I watched him eat dinner while knowing he had spent weeks collecting my apologies, my worried texts, and my emotional moments like pieces of evidence. He had mistaken my trust for stupidity. That was his first major mistake. His second was thinking I would confront him before I understood the entire plan. At 6:15 the next morning, I called my older cousin, Rachel. Rachel was a family law attorney in Nashville. We weren't extremely close, but we trusted each other, and she had once told me something I never forgot. If your marriage ever turns into a legal problem, don't make your first move emotional. Make it informed. I told her I needed help. 2 hours later, I was sitting in her office. I brought the iPad. Rachel watched every video twice. When the third one ended, she folded her hands on the desk. Does Daniel know Noah recorded this? No. Does Margaret? No. Good. That one word gave me strength. Rachel asked about our finances. I told her Daniel handled most of the household investment accounts because he was better with numbers. She did not criticize me. She simply asked for access to everything I could legally access: bank statements, mortgage records, credit reports, tax returns, insurance policies, retirement accounts, business filings. Then she told me to check my credit. That was the first real explosion. There was a home equity line connected to my property. $190,000. I had never opened it. My knees nearly gave out. Rachel told me not to panic. Then she brought in a forensic accountant named Marcus Lee. Over the next 10 days, Marcus and Rachel found enough to turn my fear into something colder, something useful. Daniel had been moving money for more than 2 years. And not huge transfers, that would have been obvious. Instead, he moved smaller amounts. Once $200 here, $400 there. Business expense. Our temporary transfer. Money disappeared into an account connected to an LLC I had never heard of. The LLC was registered to a mailbox in Georgia. Its manager was Daniel. Its backup contact was Margaret. Then Marcus found credit card payments for hotel stays in Chattanooga on dates Daniel claimed he was traveling for work in other states. At first, I assumed another woman. There wasn't one. The truth was stranger. Daniel had been meeting with a financial advisor and a divorce attorney recommended by his mother. He had been planning my removal like a corporate restructuring. Slowly, quietly, with spreadsheets. That hurt in a way I can't explain. An affair would have been betrayal. This was administration. He had reduced 11 years of marriage to a project plan, and then Marcus found the document that changed the case. A scanned authorization form connected to the home equity line. My signature was on it. But I had not signed it. I knew because the signature had one tiny detail wrong. When I signed my last name, in the final orca in Carter loops backward. My father taught me to sign that way when I was a teenager. The signature on the form had no loop. Rachel enlarged it on her screen. Emily, she said, do not touch that account. I wasn't going to. I mean it. Don't transfer from it. Don't close it. Don't call the lender yourself yet. We document first. So we documented. Everything. Meanwhile, I continued living with Daniel. That was the hardest part. He kissed my cheek before work. I let him. He asked what was for dinner. I answered. He told me about fake meetings. I nodded. And every night, after he went to sleep, I wrote down what happened that day. Noah started seeing a child therapist Rachel recommended. Not because I wanted him to become evidence. Because I wanted him to stop feeling like evidence. The therapist, Dr. Karen Paddle, told me the most important thing I could do was give Noah permission to love both parents without forcing him to choose. So I did. I never called Daniel evil in front of him. I never told Noah he had saved me. That burden was too heavy for a child. And I simply told him he had done the right thing by speaking up when something felt wrong. 2 weeks later, Daniel made his move. We were sitting at breakfast. Noah had already left for day camp. Daniel stirred his coffee and said, "I think we need space." I looked at him. Space? Yeah. He sounded rehearsed. I don't think things have been healthy between us for a while. There it was, the opening scene of his plan. I lowered my eyes. What do you mean? He sighed. You've been anxious? Suspicious? Controlling. I almost laughed. Instead, I whispered, I didn't realize you felt that way. His shoulders thought I was scared. Good. I'm not saying this to hurt you, he said. But I've documented some things. I looked up. Documented. His face changed for half a second. He had not expected me to focus on that word. Then he smiled. Just conversations, patterns. You know, I nodded slowly. What happens now? I think Noah should stay with me for a while. There it was. Not maybe. Not let's discuss it. He had already decided. I let my eyes fill with tears. Some of them were real. Daniel mistook them for weakness. That was his third mistake. Can I have a few days? I asked. He reached across the table and touched my hand. Of course. That afternoon, Rachel filed. Not a week later. Not after Daniel. That afternoon. The petition included requests addressing custody, financial restraints, and preservation of marital records. It also included the disputed home equity documents and evidence that money had been diverted into undisclosed accounts. Daniel was served the next morning at his office. I was not there. But I heard about it. His first call came at 10:19, then 10:19, 10:24. By noon, I had 17 missed calls. At 12:08, his mother called. I let that one ring too. Then she texted, Emily, there has clearly been a misunderstanding. We need to speak privately before this becomes ugly. I stared at the message. Before this becomes ugly, as if the ugliness had started with me finding out, not with them planning it. I forwarded the message to Rachel, then I blocked Margaret. Daniel came home at 4. I had already changed the code to my home office and moved copies of important records off-site. Rachel had told me not to play games with access to the house without legal authority, so I didn't. I simply made sure the things I was allowed to protect were protected. Daniel walked into the kitchen holding the court papers. What did you do? I was washing a glass. I dried my hands. I hired a lawyer. You blindsided me. For the first time in weeks, I let myself look directly at him. No, Daniel, I interrupted you. His face went blank. What does that mean? I pulled out a chair. Sit down. I'm not sitting down. Then stand. He stared at me. I opened my laptop. I played the first iPad recording. The color drained from his face. I played the second. Then the third. Daniel didn't move. When it ended, the kitchen was silent. He looked toward the hallway. Where's Noah? With Rachel's husband and their kids. His jaw tightened. You involved him in this? No, you did. That recording is out of context. I almost admired how quickly he said it. Which part, Emily? The part where you said you were collecting evidence to call me unstable. The part where your mother asked about the credit line. Or the part where you said Noah was at her house so he could start seeing me differently. Daniel stepped closer. You don't understand, I stood. For years I had shrunk whenever his voice got hard. Not that day? I understand perfectly. No, you don't. I was trying to protect my son. From what? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. From the woman who raised him while you traveled. From the woman whose house you borrowed against. From the woman whose money you quietly moved. His eyes flashed. That money was ours. Then why hide it? Silence. I nodded. That's what I thought. Daniel's voice dropped. My mother was trying to help. I laughed once. It surprised both of us. Your mother helped you fake my signature? You can't prove that? The moment the words left his mouth, he knew he had made a mistake. I had never accused Margaret of signing anything. I had only said she helped. I watched him realize it. Then I said, thank you. His face changed. For what? For answering a question I hadn't asked yet. That night, Daniel stayed at a hotel. 3 days later, Margaret hired her own attorney. That told me everything. The legal battle lasted 8 months. And no, it was not easy. Daniel's attorney argued that the recordings were incomplete. They argued that the financial transfers were legitimate. They argued that I had become suspicious and hostile. They pointed to texts where I asked Daniel where he was. They pointed to calls I made while Noah was away. They pointed to emotional messages I had sent during our marriage. But there was one problem. Context works both ways. Rachel had the full phone history. She had Daniel's travel records. She had financial records. She had lender documents. She had the LLC. She had the messages between Daniel and Margaret that were obtained through the legal process. And those messages were devastating. One message from Margaret read, if she gets emotional, don't calm her down. Let her keep texting. The more she sends, the better. Another said, Noah needs to understand that your home will be the stable one. And Daniel replied, once I have the financial side secured, I'll file. When Rachel showed me that exchange, I didn't cry. I had run out of tears for him. Then came the surprise neither Daniel nor Margaret expected. The lender had internal logs. The disputed home equity authorization had not been completed in person. It had been submitted electronically from an IP address associated with Margaret's home internet service. That did not prove by itself who typed my name. But combined with everything else, it became very difficult to explain. The financial issues were referred for additional review. The family court did not need to decide a criminal case. It only needed to decide what was best for Noah and how to handle the divorce. And by then, Daniel's carefully constructed image of me as the unstable parent had collapsed. Not because I shouted louder, because I stopped arguing and started documenting. The custody evaluator met with Noah more than once. I was terrified he would feel pressured, but Dr. Patel had prepared him in the healthiest possible way. She told him he did not have to protect me. He did not have to protect his father. He only had to tell the truth as he remembered it. And he did. He talked about Margaret's questions. He talked about Daniel telling him that my worrying was a problem. He talked about being told to think carefully about which parent made him feel calm. He talked about hiding the iPad because he felt adults were planning something around him. The evaluator later described the situation as inappropriate pressure on a child caught in adult conflict. That sentence mattered. A lot. The final hearing happened in March. I remember the courtroom being colder than I expected. Daniel sat across the room in a navy suit. Margaret sat behind him. For 11 years, I had tried to earn that woman's approval. That morning, I looked at her and felt nothing. No anger. No fear. Nothing. That was freedom. The judge's orders did not give me every single thing I wanted. Real life rarely works that way. But I received primary residential custody of Noah. Daniel received structured parenting time with conditions intended to prevent Noah from being pulled into adult legal or financial conflicts. The court ordered full accounting and division of the previously undisclosed marital funds. The questionable debt tied to my house became part of a separate financial and legal dispute instead of being quietly left for me to absorb. And because the home had been mine before the marriage, the records around its ownership mattered far more than Daniel had expected. He did not walk away with my house. He did not walk away with the hidden money, and he did not walk away with the story he had written about me. That was the part that mattered most. The story collapsed. After the divorce, Daniel's company began asking questions about some of the reimbursements connected to his so-called work travel. I did not call his employer. I did not need to. Records have a way of traveling when lawyers start asking for them. A few months later, Daniel left the company. He told mutual friends it was time for a change. Maybe it was. Margaret sold her large house the following year. I heard she moved into a smaller place closer to one of her sisters. I never went back to that house. I kept my promise to Noah. But my favorite part of the story happened much later. Almost a year after Noah came home with the iPad, we were sitting on the back porch eating watermelon. He was 10 by then, and he had grown taller. He laughed more, and he no longer watched adults' faces before saying what he really thought. That change was everything to me. He asked, "Mom, do you still have the videos?" "Les, do you watch them?" "No." "Why not?" I thought about it. "Because I don't need them anymore." He looked confused. "But they were important." "They were." "Then why don't you watch them?" I put my plate down. "Because they were the door, Noah, not the room." He frowned. I smiled. "They helped me see the truth. But I don't want to live inside the moment I discovered it." He thought about that for a while. Then he nodded. "Okay." A minute later, he asked if he could have more watermelon. Kids are wonderful that way. They can walk through a storm and still remember dessert. I still think about the woman I was before that summer. The woman who apologized too quickly. The woman who believed peace meant keeping everyone else comfortable. The woman who let another person define what was reasonable, what was emotional, what was too much. I don't hate her. She survived the only way she knew how. But I am not her anymore. Daniel thought my emotions made me weak. Margaret thought my love for my son made me easy to manipulate. They both believed that if they planned quietly enough, I would not notice until it was too late. They were wrong. And the most ironic part is this: the person they underestimated most was not me. It was Noah. A 9-year-old boy noticed the adults around him were trying to rewrite reality. He did not confront them. He did not scream. He did not try to become a hero. He simply kept the truth safe until he could bring it home. That truth protected us. So if there is one thing I learned, it is this: when someone spends years teaching you not to trust your instincts, your first act of freedom is believing yourself again. My husband built his plan in secret. My mother-in-law helped him. But my son brought me the one thing neither of them expected me to have: the truth. And once I had that, I did not need revenge that destroyed them. I only needed enough courage to stop protecting them from the consequences of what they had done. That was my revenge. That was my justice. And that was the day I learned something I will never forget. You can steal money, hide documents, and manufacture a story, but once the truth comes home, it knows exactly where it belongs.